Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Bonjour. That is the last word of French I'm going to speak in my presentation. I'm the son of a French teacher, but my French is schoolboy and rusty, and so I will, forgive me if I give my presentation in French, in English. But I'm very, very pleased to be part of this gathering. I come from the Helen Hamlyn Centre for Design in London. We're part of the Royal College of Art. And we have a very big interest in design for older people. In fact, we have been looking at this subject and applying design thinking to it for nearly 25 years. And I'm going to show you some of our thinking, some of our ideas. One of the things that I want to do today is, and this is in the title of my presentation, is to somewhat challenge this French idea of the silver economy. Yes, there is a silver economy, and we know, you can see here, this is a famous advertising campaign for Levi Strauss with photographs by Nick Knight, a very well-known English photographer, in which they are aiming Levi's at the baby boomer generation who've stuck with wearing jeans even into advanced age. And we know that many brands and companies can see the demographic curve. I come to you from a country that now has more pensioners than it has teenagers. But of course this is nothing compared to Japan, where 1 in 4 adults are now over 65. I have a friend in Tokyo, and he told me recently, throw a stone in Japan and you'll hit a senior. We're living in a world of opportunity with this older market, but is it not just a silver economy, but a silver mirage? This is a photograph taken by one of my researchers of his own grandmother struggling to read the small print on some food packaging. And we know that inappropriate design is hampering the silver economy because so many of our products and services and communications and environments are not designed for purpose. And this is the role of design thinking. You'll hear many definitions of design thinking today. Mine is very simple. We have creativity, which is the generation of ideas, and we have innovation, which is the delivery and implementation of ideas. Design thinking is the bridge between creativity and innovation, and this bridge is often lacking when it comes to older people. A little bit about the Royal College of Art. We were founded in the early 19th century. We are entirely postgraduate, and we're very proud that we recently had our 175th birthday. But I come to this august institution, and you have a history going back 100 years before that. So we're kind of relative newcomers. Now, I shouldn't mention the Duke of Wellington to a French audience. He was the victor over Napoleon at Waterloo. But it's very important in my college's history because when he died in 1852, he had a state funeral, and Royal College of Art students were commissioned to design his funeral carriage, and there it is. The novelist Charles Dickens described it as the most hideous thing he had ever seen. And as the carriage rolled down the Mall, the wheels came off, and the Duke's body slithered into the road. And it was at that point that the governors of the college decided that we needed engineers alongside decorative artists. And that was the birth of design at the Royal College of Art. The birth of the Helen Hamlyn Centre is more recent. It dates back to a famous exhibition in 1986 called New Design for Old. And at that exhibition, 15 designers from around the world were invited to redesign an item in the home, including bathrooms, incidentally, which were redesigned by the British designer Ken Grange. And New Design for Old was curated by Helen Hamlyn. And out of that came a research program at the Royal College of Art in 1991, set up by my friend, who now lives in France, incidentally, Roger Coleman, and he set up Design Age. And out of this came the Helen Hamlyn Centre for Design. Today we have 3 labs. We have over 30 designers. Our original Age and Ability lab is now supplemented by a lab looking particularly at healthcare and patient safety. And we also have a Work and City lab, a more architectural lab, looking at smart cities and those kinds of issues. So many of the things we've heard already today are very much current concerns for us. Now, we all know about the impairments of aging. It's a natural part of the life course, but it does change the relationship between people and their material environment, the products and services they encounter. And these impairments are sensory, they're to do with motion, and they're cognitive. And it's really important that these impairments are understood. But it's important, too, that we shouldn't have a deficit-based approach to designing for the silver economy. We should look at aspiration. We should look at strengths. And I suppose one could describe the way that we have worked as trying to shift the conceptual model of aging away from medical model of aging, which sees aging as a disease. It's about decrepitude, dependency, and eventually death. Moving it to a social model of aging in which older people are seen as being interconnected with their family, their friends. They have aspirations, they have things that they want to achieve. The social model of aging has been very powerful in new design thinking. And increasingly, there's a third model, which is the cultural model of aging. This is the idea that aging is a phenomenon which is compelling, which is unique and special. And it helps that many of our cultural icons, from Mick Jagger to Joni Mitchell, are now of pensionable age. And if you saw recently the Yves Saint Laurent fashion campaign that features Joni Mitchell, you get this sense of a cultural model of aging. So I want to share with you, in the short time I have with you this morning, some challenges. The first challenge for design thinkers is the challenge of definition. There is a tendency amongst marketers and people in industry and in the design community to lump older people together into one homogeneous group, the silver economy, the grey market, when actually older people have as many different segments and tribes and variations and groups as younger people. And we did a project some time ago called Yo-Yo, Young Old, Young Old. And it presented, through ethnographic research, the idea of older people as being multimodal, as oscillating between different decisions. Sometimes they would make a young decision in purchasing something. Sometimes an older person's decision, more cautious, more mature. So they might invest in bonds which are very safe, but then buy a sports car. And this kind of, and we worked with a fine artist to develop artworks which show older people on the cusp of tradition and modernity, the past and the future. And I was recently in Hong Kong visiting a sister organization of ours, the Design Institute of Social Innovation, and they had a fashion show for elders, a fashion show for seniors, which showed older people in their diversity and not as a homogeneous group. And for some older people, housing will be like this. For others, it'll be something very different. So we cannot assume that all older people are part of a homogeneous group. So design thinkers have to define older people in a much more variated and sophisticated way. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is the challenge of transition. There is this myth that's perpetuated that aging is smooth and uneventful and a slow fade to grey, when actually the level of disruption and dependency and dislocation in later life is as acute as it is in late adolescence, when you consider things like retirement, cliff's edge retirement from a full-time job to no employment, moving to a smaller property, losing a spouse or a partner, and sudden dependency through illness. And we have this idea perpetuated by the kind of photographs that photo libraries put out, that aging is kind of, what's the problem? It's absolutely fun, and everyone's on a golf course with perfect teeth. We know that this is just not true. And we worked, one of our modus operandi is to work with businesses, and we worked with Nokia on a project we called Transitions, in which they were looking at online services delivered through the mobile phone to deal with these dislocating disruptions that people have in later life. So it's not a slow fade to grey. The third challenge is the challenge of digital exclusion. This is a photograph that was actually taken again by one of our researchers who was trying to get his mother online, and it sums up the intergenerational difficulties. We have in the UK 14 million people who are termed digitally excluded, and many of them are older people. And getting people online is a real issue. Getting them into the digital age is problematic. We've done a lot of work around using pre-digital archetypes, things like mirrors and windows and chalkboards and storybooks. This is part of a project with Cisco looking at new forms of video conferencing, using giant life-size images and full-size windows instead of looking at Skype on a laptop. A lot of older people can't cope with the smallness of the image and the angle of the image. And we've taken digital exclusion a step further, and I just wanted to show you a project we're doing with a British manufacturer of stair lifts. We decided to look through ethnographic research at the circles of care that older people have. And for each person in our study, we looked at who their nearest and dearest were, friends and family, and often in the UK people are geographically dispersed. And then we took the stair lift and we fiddled with the electronics and put in sensors so that the stair lift would send a tweet to the grandchildren every time it went up and every time it went down. So this is what what it looks like. It's not very exciting. Stair lift up, stair lift down. But this was phenomenally useful because daughters and grandsons knew that their loved but distant relative was active within the home. And we then decided to put sensors on other things. We tested various things. In the end, we put sensors. This is part of a new system which we're trialing with kettle, microwave, and television, as well as stair lift. And we've currently got and this is using digital inclusion in a kind of completely new way. And we've designed an interface. And of course, Stana are trusted by older people to go into people's homes. They put in stair lifts, so they're already putting in some form of technical infrastructure. Why not put a digital network of care? The fourth challenge is the challenge of public space. Access to the built environment has always been a key part of advocacy on behalf of older and disabled people. The story of inclusive design is the story, in the first instance, of access to the built environment. And in the UK, there's been a real shift in emphasis of how streets are designed. We're moving away from streets designed to facilitate the traffic of cars, and we're moving to something called shared space. But it's very, very controversial. This is shared space in Brighton. They're popping up all over the country. Basically, you remove the curb line and you remove the railings. It's a bit like a supermarket car park where nobody has control. You know, pedestrians, cyclists, people in cars, people with shopping trolleys, they're all sharing the space, which is fantastic if you've got perfect sight and hearing. But if you're an older person, you rely on the railings and you rely on the curb. And a lot of people have been very, very upset and have protested about shared space. And we were asked to study this whole thing. We did a big ethnographic study, and we captured a lot of data. We followed older people as they moved through their local environment. And what we discovered was that, that if you are a sighted user with perfect sight, you rely these are navigational resource maps, you rely for the first kind of meter on sight and a bit of sound. But if you're a person who's a long cane user, this is somebody who's visually impaired, you rely on railings and curb lines. And so we enshrined a lot of, in a sense, we set out in a report to government what the problems were in changing our street design, and we were proposed ways to alleviate that. We've also done work around public toilets, and a lot of publicly accessible conveniences are closing in the UK, and we created the Great British Toilet Map, which is, you may laugh, this is very important for when you come to the UK and you want a publicly accessible toilet. It's based on open data from councils. It's farming big data and turning it into a user-friendly thing that is aimed at not just older people who may suffer from incontinence, but mothers with children and people with different medical conditions. The challenge of hospital care. We all know that older people are disproportionate users of healthcare when they stay in hospital for longer. We've had a lot of problems with our health service, and we've done a lot of work in this area, and this is a big issue for design thinking. Just to show you very briefly, this is an ambulance, a London ambulance, and we've been redesigning it in one of our flagship projects. We've done a lot of work with paramedics and patient groups, and we've completely reconceived the ambulance as a sterile space. We've replaced the kind of just throw everything into the ambulance for every emergency. We now have a digital diagnostic system which anticipates the time when all patients' medical records can be digitally retrieved. And if you look at the interior, it's like the inside of a yacht with molded plastics that you can clean. And we have modular treatment packs. And this is now a European Union Horizon 2020 project as we take it forward. And this is what the new interior of the ambulance looks like. So my time is nearly up, and I just want to tell you in the last minutes of my talk of the two final challenges. And in a sense, they are the most abstract, but the most important. One is the challenge of co-creation. We need to be thinking of a world in which we are not designing for older people, for a silver market, but designing with a silver market. We need to design with people rather than for them. And we need design thinking to be this bridge between creativity and innovation. We need to find new models, and this is some work we've been doing in Hong Kong. We need to find new techniques and tools. This is work we did with Samsung, who were very worried about older people not using their mobile phones. And when we did research around Europe, older people said, well, we're not expert in technology. Oh, younger people know about technology. So we said, no, we're not going to talk to you about technology. We're going to talk to you about bananas, because everybody is an expert in bananas. And we gave people a banana and stickers, and we said, you know, make your perfect mobile phone with these tools. And out of it came the idea that people wanted simplicity, and we came up with a system for setting up your phone. This is the instruction manual. It's inside a storybook which takes you through. It's an example of design thinking, which is reframing the problem and turning it on its head. Similarly, we've worked with ethnographic research with older carpenters to discover how to design low-cost, lightweight power tools for older people. The challenge that we ultimately face is the challenge of the unprecedented. This is what the silver market is about. We've never been here before. We are facing the greatest change to the age balance since the end of infant mortality in Victorian times. We had a Fulbright scholar from the States who looked at the fact that in an unprecedented way, the fastest rise in sexually transmitted diseases is the over 55 who are back on the market having got divorced. And this is part of the campaign we developed. Age is not a condom. We've done studies at Tsinghua University, my colleague Yankee Lee, where we're finding people in their 90s still doing lab experiments and aging incredibly well. We need to know more about these people. We need to know more about how you age well in place, and we need to think in a fresh way. So these, ladies and gentlemen, are my 7 challenges of aging for design thinkers. The challenge of definition and transition, of digital inclusion, and of making public space accessible to all, of hospital care, of co-creation, and the unprecedented. Enjoy your day. Thank you very much. Thank you.